I did Richard II. The Tragedy of Richard II is what it's technically called. The genre is it's a history play. It was written. It's estimated around 1595. First quarto was in 1597. Second and third in 1598, and then fourth in 1608. The first character you need to know is obviously Richard II. He was the King of England, and he was kind of an immature king. He came into the reign a little bit early, and his uncles kind of helped him when he was younger. And then as he got older, he started to take that power, but the uncles still wanted to have the power for him, so that's kind of important background information to know. Richard kind of used his money unwisely, and so that kind of plays into the play, as you'll later on see. And then the next most important character you need to know is Henry Bolingbroke. He is King Henry IV, who he'll later become. He's a little bit more responsible, a little bit more pragmatic than Richard. John of Gaunt is the Duke of Lancaster, and he's the uncle of Richard and the father of Henry, and he dies. And that kind of causes the beginning of the play, kind of the conflict that comes into play later on. So those are the three most important characters. Then I'll just let you know what happens throughout the play. So first, King Richard comes onto the scene, and he finds Henry Bolingbroke and Thomas Mowbray. They are arguing about Henry is accusing Mowbray of treachery against the king because Thomas of Gloucester was murdered, and so Henry is blaming him for that murder. And Thomas Mowbray actually was a part of the conspiracy to murder him, but he was kind of hired by Richard. And Thomas of Gloucester is actually one of Richard's uncles, so Richard kind of created this conspiracy to murder him because the uncle was trying to take the power. In the next scene, you see the Duchess of Gloucester, the widow of Thomas Gloucester, trying to get John of Gaunt to avenge the death. So Richard suggests that they have a duel. Henry Bolingbroke and Thomas Mowbray, they have a duel. And right before the duel happens, Richard stops it, and he banishes both the men from the lands. Bolingbroke, he first tells him he's banished for 10 years, and then he banishes Mowbray for life. But then he quickly makes the sentence only to 6 years for Bolingbroke. And so Richard is then counseled into going to war with Ireland, but because he's unwise with his money, he doesn't have the funds to fund that, so he starts taxing the lands unfairly, the people of the lands. And then John of Gaunt dies. And so because John of Gaunt was Bolingbroke's father, there was no inheritor, so Richard decided that he would take his lands and his money to fund that war. So he's on his deathbed, and Richard makes this decision. Then John of Gaunt wants to talk to Bolingbroke, and he wants to kind of tell him some words of wisdom, to let his pride kind of cease as he reigns. And Richard doesn't want to hear it. So then Gaunt dies. As he's dying, he kind of curses Bolingbroke. Gaunt dies, and Richard declares that he'll take that money. So then Henry Bolingbroke finds out about that, and as Richard departs for Ireland with his army, Henry Bolingbroke assembles an army and comes into Ravensburg.
20 seconds.
What's that?
20 seconds.
20 seconds. Okay, so that happens. And then in Act 3,
That's it. Tough. All right. Good work.